These very well could be the last retailer incentives I ever pre-order. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up 4 orders of retailer incentives that I placed this year. I finally received all 4 of these orders, and I'm really excited to unpack these and show you which books I pre-ordered. But in preparation for this, I was reviewing the orders that I placed, and when I'm looking at the specific books, I'm also starting to look up their fair market values, see if the books have any potential value if I were to get them graded and so forth. And one of the things that I do is I also check availability. I start to look at other online stores just to see how the books are performing and what the books might be going for still at some of these stores. And it's always surprising to me to see which books are available still. Because when I'm placing the pre-order for these retailer incentives, there's usually a reason. Certainly, I have an attraction to the cover art, or I follow specific artists, and these orders, it really no different from that strategy. But there's 100% a feeling of if I don't place this pre-order, this book may not be available on release day, or I may have to pay some extraordinary amount on the secondary market if I truly want to have these books in my collection. And then lo and behold, when I receive the books and I'm grading them and checking on their availability just to kind of see what's going on in the market, looking at places like eBay, but also some of the stores that I regularly purchase from, a lot of times the books are there. And so I want to go ahead and show you certainly the comics that I pre-ordered and where I ordered them from, but what I'm also going to do is let you know where I found these books right now, where you can actually buy them and compare them in the order summary to what I paid for the books at pre-order, what the fair market value is, if any of these books have value if I were to get them graded. But then in addition to those metrics that I'll share with you, I'm also going to talk about where you can find these books today. And again, it's always surprising in one direction or the other. So let me unpack these 4 orders so I can show you which books I pre-ordered that were recently released, as at the time I was trying to stay ahead of the curve and pick up these retailer incentives. And I'm excited to share with you which comics I ordered. All right, here are the 4 packages that I'll be opening. I have 2 orders from Third Eye Comics, and then 1 from Golden Apple Comics, and 1 from Bird City Comics. These were all orders that I placed around March of 2024, and then were fulfilled somewhere between late April 2024 and June of 2024, and wanted to unbox them all together here as they're all very similar in terms of them being retailer incentives that I pre-ordered. In terms of shipping, Third Eye Comics, they do a $5 flat shipping no matter how many books you order. So when I place my pre-order, I select the $5 shipping at checkout. Golden Apple was free shipping, but they charged me tax, and Bird City was free shipping and no tax. And all were sent via USPS priority mail. Let me go ahead and get these opened up. All right, if I were to kind of like grade these as far as their shipping, Bird City was super easy, very nice, minimal tape. It was all painter's tape, just a couple of pieces holding the Gemini mailer together. Golden Apple, not too bad. And then Third Eye Comics is the worst. After all this time, I did finally figure out how to open it, where they put 2 or 3 backing boards on each side of the comic book stack, and then they take painter's tape and tape it really tightly. And I end up taking one of the backing boards and just rip it. And by ripping it, it opens up and loosens the painter's tape, which then I can just peel off. But I've been talking about this for a long time. And please, Cody, stop packing. Just stop it. Stop packing them that way. I used to have to like peel with my fingernail. But there's a lot of just wasted supplies and destruction on my part for some of the packing on this. Actually, going back to Golden Apple, they also used tape where it was like super tight against the edge. And the problem is when you can't peel the tape, they're not using tape pulls or anything. I have to take my scissors or a knife, and I get super nervous because I have to cut next to the board, which if I miss, it goes right into the comic. And I have done that in the past. And there's no other way to really open it other than just start ripping and shredding. And I was even cutting through some of the cardboard on the Golden Apple one. So I'd probably give an A to Bird City, B minus to Golden Apple, and D plus to Third Eye Comics. But I'm not here to talk about the packing so much as I am the comics. So let's get to it. I'll show the two Third Eye Comics orders first. And we'll start off with Star Wars Jango Fett #1. This is the 1 in 25 retailer incentive. Cover art by one of my favorite cover artists, David Marquez. So really nice combination, Star Wars comic, retailer incentive, cover artist, and really cool Aura Singh Bounty Hunter cover here on this first issue of Star Wars Jango Fett. Next is Napalm Lullaby. This is an independent series, the first issue from Image Comics from writer Rick Remender and the artist Bengal. And I pre-ordered this 1 in 20 because the cover art was done by Jeff DeCall. And so what I was doing in a lot of cases is I will follow certain artists and I will look for their upcoming releases and specifically target those releases regardless of really any publisher or title. Jeff DeCall does a lot of great work across a number of publishers and titles, really doesn't have any specific loyalty to any of those. But he always does great work, in my opinion, so I'm always on the lookout for any of his books. Another artist, kind of in the same vein, although he does quite a bit of work for Marvel, Ryan Stegman here on Deadpool #1. This is the 1 in 25 retailer incentive. Great Deadpool action shot, ninjas. I mean, what's not to love about this one? Then we have Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin #1. This is a 1 in 25 cover art by Alex Maleev, who, like the other artists I mentioned, is on a short list that I track where I pick up almost everything that they do. I don't know how successful the Shadow of the Green Goblin series was, but just thought that this was a great cover by Maleev. David Nakayama, just the list goes on and on. Also an artist that I follow. Here, he did the cover for this 1 in 25 retailer incentive of Sensational She-Hulk #7. Always a fan of covers like this where the character is breaking through the trade dress art. A great Nakayama cover on that one. And then I picked up 2 issues of the new Fleeks and Forrester series. Well, it's been out for a little while, but it was new at the time that I pre-ordered, of Feral #1. This is the 1 in 10 retailer incentive. It's essentially cover A, just without the trade. So it's the full art version. And the full art was only a 1 in 10. There was a number of covers for that book and different incentive ratios. A lot of them, homaging different horror movies or artwork. But I like cover A, and that was the 1 in 10 full art version. So those were the 2 orders from Third Eye Comics. Next is going to be Golden Apple Comics. And we'll start with Wonder Woman #8. This is the 1 in 25 cover art by Joshua Swaby. Sometimes it'll be a Sway variant, sometimes it'll be a Swaby variant. But really love this cover that he did for Wonder Woman. And then the other Golden Apple Comics book I picked up is X-Men Forever #2. This is the Art Adams 1 in 25 retailer incentive. And Adams, over the last year, maybe 2 years, has just been on an absolute tear of very interesting cover art, collectible cover art, and incentives that have really popped in value. And so I went ahead and picked that one up too. And then this last book, picked up from Bird City Comics. I was on the lookout for this one, went to a number of different places, looked at the different price points. This one was already being sold for at least double ratio, in some cases 2.5 or even triple ratio, because of the anticipation of this just being valuable. I went ahead and paid double ratio, although not quite double. I used a coupon to get some discount on the book and was happy that I found that coupon at the last second before I placed the order. But still, a very expensive pickup and purchase. But in my experience in history with purchasing books from this artist, it did feel like it was worth it in the long run, and certainly a book that I felt like I had to have. And this is Spider-Gwen, The Ghost Spider, #1. Now, Spider-Gwen's series before this was just called Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider. This is Spider-Gwen The Ghost Spider, and this is a 1 in 100 retailer incentive. And of all the places that I looked online in terms of availability, price, my willingness to kind of trust that I would get a book in high grade, I ended up making the selection there from Bird City Comics. So I can't wait to get that book out and grade it, catalog it, and compare it to fair market values. So let's do that. I'll show you the order summary where I'll go through each of these books and show you what I paid for them. And ultimately, I want to try and answer the question, was it worth it once again to make this sort of type of pre-order, or could I have just waited and picked them up now? And if I did wait, what kind of price would I be paying for these books? Let's take a look at the order summary. All right, here is the order summary for the 4 orders that I placed, 2 with Third Eye Comics, 1 with Golden Apple, and 1 with Bird City. The first order contained Napalm Lullaby #1, Deadpool #1, and Star Wars Jango Fett #1. All 3 were retailer incentives, 1 in 25s. The Napalm Lullaby was a 1 in 20. I was invoiced $74.97. It cost me $5 to ship that order. The second was 2 1 in 25s, Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin #1, Sensational She-Hulk #7, and then the 2 copies of the 1 in 10 of Feral #1. I was invoiced $74.96 for that order with that $5 shipping. The Golden Apple Comics order was the 1 in 25 Wonder Woman #8, Swabby variant, and X-Men Forever #2, the Art Adams 1 in 25. I was invoiced $114.98 for that one, and I did not have to pay for shipping, but I did have to pay California tax on those 2 books. And then the last one was the order from Bird City. It was 1 book. It was Spider-Gwen, The Ghost Spider #1, the 1 in 100 Frizzen full art variant. I paid $180 for that 1 book. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug in the grade as a 9.8. I know that may not be the correct thing to do, as a lot of these stores have a policy of guaranteeing only 9.2 and above, but for the sake of this sort of presentation and the review of the numbers, I want to see what these books are going for in a 9.8, because that's the grade I'm shooting for on brand new books. And I also assume that retailer incentives are maybe treated a little bit nicer or more securely by these stores. It's not always the case. But again, just to plug in the numbers and see the values, I went ahead and put in the 9.8 grades. So let's take a look at them one at a time. Napalm Lullaby #1, independent story from Image Comics. I haven't heard really much about it at all, but it was important to me to acquire the book as the cover art was done by Jeff DeCall. Cover price has that book at $10, and CGC 9.8 fair market value is $33. I ended up paying, bring in my total cost here, $21.66 for a negative raw value add of $11.66 and a negative CGC value of $13. So I'll ask the same question with each of these books. Should I have pre-ordered it? I think if you look at the values, that could be one way to answer it. But the way that I look at it is, could I have picked up the book today for less? It's not so much did the value drop. I still want the book, but it's more of when should I buy the book and not if. So here it is, Napalm Lullaby #1 on Midtown Comics. It is available near mint for $10.26. There is the add to cart button, just to show you there's nothing up my sleeve. This is currently available. You know, I'd have to pay for probably tax if I remember right, but then if you order enough, you can unlock free shipping on Midtown. It's been a while since I ordered from Midtown, but there it is, $10.26. about $11.50 less than what I originally paid for it. Deadpool #1, I paid $26.66. Essentially on Third Eye, the way that it works is they just take the ratio, and that's the price of the book minus 1 cent. So 1 in 25 is typically $24.99. They don't really discount it. If you're a frequent customer, you can start to unlock coupons, but it takes a while to build up those points and redeem them. So you're pretty much paying at ratio plus that $5 shipping to get your book sent to you. Cover Price has that 1 in 25 at $14 and a CGC 9.8 at $36 for, again, another pretty significant and similar loss. $12.66 on the raw value and $15 if I were to send that book in for grading and it got a 9.8 in terms of what I paid for the book, all of the fees, the shipping, etc. What a negative CGC value tells me is you're better off just buying it already slabbed. So I could have already picked out that book in a 1 in 25 CGC 9.8 and just bought it for around $36 instead of paying almost $27 to get it raw where there's no guarantee of what the grade is. Now, is this book still available? Yes, it is. Same source, Midtown Comics, has this for $8.20. $8 for that book. And if I were in the market, I would consider buying it again. I would have to run some numbers and start to look at, again, if the total cost of this is less, then there's certainly a CGC positive value add. So it's just kind of a numbers game at that point. But I ordered the book back in March because I wanted it then, and I still kind of want it now. I certainly would want it now for $8. Star Wars Jango Fett #1, a 1 in 25, just like Deadpool #1, paid $26.66 to acquire the book. This one's holding a little bit better value at $18 according to Cover Price, so not as significant of a raw value loss. No 9.8 fair market value at this point on that book. Once again, could I have just bought this book today? Why, yes, I could have. Not as steep of a discount. So there it is, the add to cart button. It is $15.31 at Midtown Comics. So what's interesting is that this book that has had a little bit more value or sustained better value, at least according to Cover Price, that book is more expensive than the other two retailer incentives. So there's probably some formula they have there in terms of looking at what books are going for, either through Cover Price or eBay or some combination where they're looking at that. It could just be the number of books they've sold or what's in their inventory too. It may not just be online sales only, but just interesting coincidence of how those books were priced based on what's been happening in the secondary market. Moving on to the second Third Eye order, Spider-Man Shadow of the Green Goblin #1. The Alex Maleev 1 in 25 is $12 according to Cover Price. No 9.8 value. I paid $26.24 to acquire that book. Pretty significant $14.24 value loss. Could I have just waited and purchased that book today? Yes, absolutely. $12.20 on Midtown Comics. Still love the cover, still love Alex Maleev, but definitely should have waited on that. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Sensational She-Hulk #7, the 1 in 25 David Nakayama cover. It was a 1 in 25 on Third Eye, so I had to pay at ratio plus shipping $26.24 to acquire that book. Fair market value of that book is holding at ratio roughly $26. No CGC 9.8 reported sales, so a break even on that one. But still, could I have purchased that book today? And this is where it gets interesting because the answer is yes. But if you were buying it from a store, like here it is on Gmart Comics, Gmart has this for $70. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't find it cheaper on eBay, but eBay for me is a last resort. I understand that stores are looking at books and looking at grades and values and all of that, and they're probably deciding what types of books to send out, but I don't believe that they are looking at the condition of the books as closely as a private seller would be on eBay. That's why eBay for me is always a last resort. I feel like I would have a better chance of a 9.8 candidate arriving to me in the mail from a place like Midtown or Gmart, My Comic Shop, or any of the number of other I kind of classify them as like your Shopify group of stores, whether it's Bird City, Third Eye, Golden Apple. I feel like first and foremost, your larger stores, Midtown Gmart, give you the better chance. Not always, but could give you the better chance. And then the Shopify group is that second chance. And then the third chance would be eBay. That's how the logic is in my head anyway. So here it is on Gmart, it's $70. So in that case, it did appear to make sense to go ahead and pick this up. Now, fair market value is only 26, so why would you pay so much at Gmart for that book? But again, if you wanted to have a shot at a 9.8 candidate, it's available. This is one that I am glad that I pre-ordered. The next book, Feral #1, there's 2 copies there. $9 for that book. It is a 1 in 10, so I had to pay $10 or $11.24 after factoring in shipping. But not too bad, similar to the She-Hulk, kind of a wash, $2.24 loss roughly, but $9 for a 1 in 10. It's more or less a round ratio or a holding ratio. This one does have CGC value and a 9.8, $39, so it would be borderline a book that would be worth sending in for a pre-screen if they do grade out a 9.8. So that adds a little bit of interest there because that is a positive value add of $4 or more or less a break even if I wanted to go ahead and get those books slabbed. Except if I wanted to get those couple of copies of Feral #1, the 1 in 10, could I have just picked that up today? Absolutely. Here we are again at Midtown Comics, where I could have bought a 1 in 10 for pretty much the price I paid for cover A, which is $5.26. So it would have made much more sense to go ahead and wait on that book, and then it would have been almost a slam dunk to send in to CGC, because then it would have been more around a $10 or $11 value add for each of those. Moving on to Golden Apple, Wonder Woman #8. I paid $60.23 to acquire that book. Now, with Golden Apple, what they do is they will inflate the price, and often for pre-orders, they will just list the book at double ratio, sometimes triple or quadruple. It depends on the ratio number. And they're almost like pre-speculating on your pre-order on your behalf, meaning they think that this Swaby variant or the Art Adams variant is going to be a hit in the secondary market, and you're going to have to pay that fee up front if you really want the book. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it or how you feel about these books, I went ahead and paid that fee. Now, here's what's interesting is Golden Apple's not wrong. Look at the values, and I'm just going to kind of lump these two together because they are similar. They're both 1 in 25s. I think they both were hot on pre-order. I was looking at eBay pre-order prices as well, and it was over ratio. And again, with eBay being my last resort, I felt like Golden Apple in that second tier of stores that I look for these types of books, that it was in my best interest to buy it from them. And they're not wrong in that they have popped in terms of having a fair market value for the raw books over ratio. Wonder Woman #8, cover price has that at $39. So while it's still a raw value loss, the fee that I paid was just too much, but they were right in that it's going to be worth more than purchasing it at ratio. And the other thing that they were right, or you could argue that I was right in terms of securing it, is that it's not available on any of the other stores that I talked about. It is only available on eBay. Here it is. You can buy it right now. $44.99, $6 shipping. Here's a $40 copy, $6.16 shipping, $43, $50, $55. Here's a $40 one if you trust it coming from Mexico. So in that $40 to $55 range plus shipping, I paid $60, which was certainly more, but I'm almost paying an additional $5 or $10, almost like an insurance fee, if you will, to go ahead and pick it up from Golden Apple instead of a private seller. X-Men Forever #2, similar story, Golden Apple, etc. They were right. Cover price has that book at $41, which is over ratio. And it also has a CGC 9.8 value of $76. Now, I paid $54.75 to acquire that book, a raw value loss and a very minimal or break-even CGC value loss, but felt like double ratio is kind of where that book was settling in during pre-order. and it almost made it on the secondary market at $41. If I were to just look around today to see where I could pick it up, Midtown once again has this book available, but it is inflated for the secondary market. Even though it's a 1 in 25, they have it at $51.43, which you could say there's no way. Why would I pay $51.43 for that book on Midtown? That's way too expensive. And here I went and pre-ordered it from Golden Apple for $54.75. So again, happy to have the book. Certainly, if it grades out at 9.8, I'm even more thrilled, and I feel like I made the right decision. However, it's all just timing as well, because maybe having thought about it for 2 or 3 months, maybe I just wouldn't have had the same level of interest in the book, or I might have convinced myself if there was a $75 CGC 9.8 to say, why bother? Why risk buying it for $50 plus shipping or plus tax when I could just get it already slabbed and secured in a 9.8? And that's what's happening with a lot of these. You have two things working against the book. You have the ratio that seems to disappear once it's slabbed in terms of the value that it should be for the manufactured scarcity of it. And then secondly, just the market itself dipping, where you have this like fixation of, oh, a 1 in 25 must be $25 always. Even though the market is moving in the wrong direction, you don't see 1 in 25s being available for pre-order for like $15, and you see Midtown putting this one at double ratio. But then once it gets slabbed and encased, you can find deals there, because that's where the market is slipping. Particularly if these books go off at auction, you can find them even for under ratio slabbed in a 9.8. Not saying that X-Men Forever #2 is one of those books. I'm just saying that in general. The last book to look at, Spider-Gwen, the Ghost Spider, #1. This was obviously the biggest risk. It was the most expensive. I paid $180 for it. Cover price has that as a $145 book raw, so a loss of $35. Same logic as Golden Apple, though. I wanted to secure it from one of those online retail stores and not eBay. And when I was doing my analysis and looking at pre-orders, this was a difficult book to track down at pre-order. Bird City Comics had this listed at $200, and I found a 10% off coupon that I believe you can sign up by sending them your phone number and opting in for text messages. Maybe you can do this through email through their newsletter. But I was able to get a discount to drop the price to $180, complete door-to-door, no tax, no shipping. And this book being as popular as it is, and I knew it would be because it's Frizzen, a CGC 9.8 is $284 for potentially an $80 value add if that book grades out. Now again, same logic, just to secure it, I could have just waited, tried to find it around $280, maybe send an offer for $250, get it closer, and then I don't have all of the anxiety and stress of worrying about, is that book going to be a 9.8? I could just go ahead and buy it slabbed outright. The problem with that, though, is some of the Frizzen variants, particularly the 1 in 100s, any sort of like her most popular, like full art variants, things of that nature, sometimes in a 9.8, they'll hit $300-$400. So my thinking was, this is going to be another book that is going to be ultra popular, and wanted to go ahead and pay the $180 for it, thinking, maybe like I'm thinking of the Sandman universe, Nightmare Country #1, where in a 9.8 that book was getting into the 300s or just under 400. Anyway, so just thinking about the numbers and the potential there, that's what I was going for. And with that book too, we will ask the question, should I have just waited? Can I buy this book today? And as a matter of fact, you can on Gmart. This is available right now for $250. Obviously $70 more than I paid at the time. But if I missed out on pre-order and I was FOMOing and just really wanted to have the book, well, there it is today, where I could have just waited, picked it up, and bought it raw. Now, I haven't done a ton of research on that book on eBay, but with CGC 9.8s at around $284, I think there was a recent sale where GPA was reporting that around $250. Again, it doesn't make sense to me why Gmart would set a price like that. They're basically trying to sell the book raw at the 9.8 graded value, which is tough. But the book is popular, very, very popular, one of the most popular cover artists. I think ultimately with that book, though, the fact that it is a full art version of one of the standard variants with the trade that's just open order cover price. That's where I think ultimately that book might be hurt in the long run. But still, what I was trying to do is factor in sort of the market history with Frizen in particular, and some of her more popular ratios, and just how the values have tracked over time. It made sense for me to splurge. I'm a collector of hers and these types of covers anyway, so it's not to say that $180 was a good price. I would have obviously loved to have been able to find it for a lot less, but I knew when I first saw the artwork, it was a book that I needed to have in my collection. So I splurged and spent the money. In summary, though, I have this like ongoing love-hate relationship with retailer incentives. I get a lot of comments on these types of videos. A lot of people say, hey, if you love the cover, you love the ratio, you love sort of looking at it from the investment or speculative side, then just do it. Just don't buy the books and don't look back. Other comments and feedback really related to kind of the manufactured scarcity, that retailer incentives really aren't worth the trouble. I listen to all the feedback, and I think just over time, what I have learned is just wait. Honestly, just wait for these books. And if you end up missing on them, it is painful. I think like Jeff DeCall, one of his variant for Something is Killing the Children is probably one of those ratio variants that, you're like, oh, I missed out on it, right? I'll find it later. And then it just becomes this thing, this entity, this collectible that it just can't be found, can't be reached. And that's what those types of books kind of haunt me, and I shouldn't think about those situations with every retailer incentive. But the haunting of missing out, which you could just define it as not being haunted, it's just FOMO. But I call it a haunting just because it sticks with me. It sits with me when I'm looking for books and trying to place orders, and looking at retailer incentives and kind of predicting the future, trying to predict which of these books are really going to be collectible and desirable going forward. The trouble is, I think collectors are more informed now, so it's very challenging to find a ratio book where you can pre-order it kind of under the radar at ratio or just underneath, and then have it take off later. Those are the books that really typically are those truly like 1 in 100 retailer incentives, meaning 1 out of every 100 retailer incentive becomes that sort of iconic book, or that collectible desirable book. Is that Alex Maleev's Spider-Man ever going to be at that level? No, of course not. I just love Maleev's artwork. I thought that it was a great Spider-Man book, but I get caught up in this haunting of the FOMO, but also, is it a book that is just going to disappear and I'll never see it again? And it's only 20 to 25 bucks. Well, the only 20 to 25 bucks, that really adds up fast over time. And so, bringing this whole thing full circle, I am going to take a break. I am going to be done with retailer incentives. I am going to kind of take a step back, and it is difficult. I see the hot lists. I see other things come out. I see people talking about books that are going double, triple, quadruple ratio on the secondary market. And yeah, with hindsight being 2020, I could look at these books and just say, you know what? Just spend the money on this one. That's it. Ignore the rest. I don't have to spend 3 or 4 times what you'd spend on this just to have the other ones, when this is the one that you want anyway. So one strategy, if I were to get back into looking at retailer incentives, is almost just, it wouldn't be setting a budget, it would be setting a limit. Like, limit yourself to 2 per month and only pick the 2 that you must have, whether it's an at ratio or double, triple ratio book or whatever it is, but then also maybe wait on it too. And that's the big lesson that I had to teach myself over the years by doing this so many times, is just to wait until release day. Because if you still want the book, it'll be there for a lot less than the pre-order price. And also, if you think about it, you may not really want the book anymore once it's out there. Part of the process is feeling like, I want to get in on something before I miss out. But then once it's out there and it's in the masses and you can see it's not on a lot of people's want lists, it's not really being tracked, then the book's not all that interesting, or is not as interesting as it used to be. And that's some of the psychology around collecting that I have to deal with. Let me know how you deal with retailer incentives, if you're still out there trying to track these books down, or any of these books, some that you missed out on or some that you picked up. Feel free to leave me a comment and share your story. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.